So, leadership isn't just about getting things done, it's about leading with your heart. Now, we're going to explore how, as a compassionate investor, you can thrive and also take care of yourself. So, this is part 8 of our 9-part series on how to start a transitional housing facility. And in today's episode, we're going to literally look at what things you need to do as a compassionate investor to continue to thrive in this space. And let's dive in. So you probably hear me talk about compassionate investor probably more times than you want to hear, but I love it. I love being a compassionate investor. A compassionate investor is someone who invests in real estate that impacts people. So we're a little different than most. It's like our own little niche of the world of real estate investing. And because we're real estate investors that have a compassionate heart, there are things that you need to do to continue to thrive in this space. First and foremost, and I'm going to be the first to raise my hand and say I'm guilty. I do this a lot. But it's important that you have self-care as a leader. And I can only say this because being a compassionate investor as long as I have, I am constantly on the go. I'm constantly, and I don't know if these last few episodes I've been on site out in Blue Ridge, Georgia, because I had to take some time away for self-care. I needed to clear my head. I needed to put things in perspective. I needed to make sure that my emotional and mental health was solid. So there are things like that that you need to do in this space to protect yourself from all the pulls that happen to you as a compassionate investor. I can say that more so in this space as an investor than any other, you're going to experience more stress. So know that going into this, you'll probably be under a little more stress than typical because you're dealing with people. Where if you're just a real estate investor, you're dealing with properties for the most part, flipping the properties, which that can be stressful within itself. And trust me, I'll choose this 100 times over than flipping a house because this is where my heart is at. But in that space is a different type of stress that you have to manage as a compassionate investor. So I want to encourage you to know that and take the time necessary to take care of your health, not just your mental and your emotional health, but also your physical health. And I will just say, because it's a constant, I don't want to say struggle. It's a constant reminder for me to stay on top of my physical state, to make sure that I stay healthy, and that I'm on top of how I'm feeling. So I make sure I do my regular checkups annually to see my doctors, make sure everything's aligned, making sure that those things are right, making sure I take the time to meditate so that I can deal with my mental and do the things necessary to just level me out, as well as my emotional. But taking that time out for yourself, you owe it to yourself, because you are working with other people and you are impacting other people's lives. And sometimes their stress falls on you. You feel what they feel, especially when, you're dealing with, particular population, or you're dealing with someone who, has their back out where they came from. Like, who wants to, it's a lot of stress. You want the best for someone and they choose to do something differently. They go back and, they're no longer in recovery, or they're back in incarceration, or their stuff sometimes becomes your stuff. So I want to encourage you to learn how to still be compassionate for other people, but know that is their lives. in their life, and when they create that life for themselves, you can't take responsibility for it, but I'm not going to tell you that it's not going to touch you, it's not going to impact you, because it will. So I just want to encourage you that as you are moving into this compassionate investing world, that you give yourself the care that you deserve, regardless of whether you're a compassionate investor. You should be doing this anyway, but when you're a compassionate investor, it's different, because you are carrying, sometimes you feel like you carry on the weight of the world, and you want to make sure you're getting what you need to be able to survive and be able to still keep yourself together. So prioritizing your emotional, your mental, and your physical health is critical, and then knowing how to manage the stress and the burnout. To speak to the burnout briefly, because there was a time, because I've been doing this for 15 years, like, you cannot imagine where I was just like, I'm done, like, I can't do another house, I can't. And then guess what happens? The heart starts talking, like, I'm now developing and creating again. Where I thought I had moved on and was like done, I'm back in it again, doing the same type of housing that we do, because the need is here. I just probably needed a break. So talking about having the tools of managing it, the tools of managing burnout, because you're going to experience burnout, promise you. So how are you going to manage that? How are you going to take time out for yourself? Building out a day where you just you yourself and God, or you just want to do something that you love doing. If you love reading, you love whatever, but build that time out for yourself. You have to have the tools to manage that. So go ahead and create yourself a toolbox for managing self-care and managing how you deal with stress and burnout, because those are going to help you in the long run, and then they'll recenter you back to where you're supposed to be, because you can't change who you are on the inside. You really can't. And who wants to? You want to be lined up with what he put in you, and that always is going to stay connected. But you're going to have a moment where you're going to feel the burnout, or you're going to feel something. So how are you going to manage that? And then I would say, you want to make sure that you, as a compassionate investor, are staying true to the values that you created, because those are the things that can take you off where you're going sometimes. I can say, as I think about the things that I hold true and valuable to me, there are things that challenge that, and I have to constantly come back to, wait, where are we supposed to be? This is where we're supposed to be. So it doesn't matter. This is what I value. So I'm not going to let anything take me off of where I'm going. Those challenges we will overcome, because these are the values that I hold true. And you want to be able to balance just your life as a compassionate investor with just being practical. You're not going to be a savior. So I'm telling you that now, because I'm talking to myself, as I say that. You are not a savior. So being practical in the decisions that you make are going to help you move in this space better, be more effective. You can't be overcome by your compassion. You have to be practical and make decisions through discernment that help you be the compassionate investor that you are and that you are becoming. Because you evolve in more and more. Like, I've been a compassionate investor the whole 15 years. And as I think back to even prior to that, I had traits of a compassionate investor even then that are now showing up today, because I've evolved. But you cannot just simply be driven by your compassion only. There has to be a balance. So learning how to balance the practicality of things with compassion, that's what you really want to do. Now, I can say, as I think right now, like, my mother's probably my best example of this, as I think about moving into new spaces, or staying focused on my values and my visions, or knowing when it's time to move things on. My mother is an amazing woman, I'll just say. And she has been the best example for me. She's not a compassionate investor, but she's a compassionate woman. And I've learned from her through her compassion when it's time to move on and when it's time to shift into something else. So I will say, as you navigate tough decisions, you have to do that with discernment. And she has shown me that. She has shown me how to make tough decisions and stand on it, even with my compassionate heart. So those are the things that you have to do as you move into this space as a compassionate investor, making sure that you're doing the right thing by people and you're making the right decisions, even if they're tough, to continue to move forward. And then as you go through, I'm going to say, because I tend to, I don't always celebrate my milestones. Sometimes I think we have a hard time doing that. Sometimes I look back at over the years and I'm like, I have really accomplished a lot, but I cannot honestly say that I have always celebrated my accomplishments, because I'm always striving for the next, for the next, for the next, because that's how I'm built. And I want to be an example to the people who have the same values as I do and who are moving in this vision with me. And by being a better example of those things, you are going to be a better person. So I want to encourage you to celebrate the things that you accomplish, even small ones. Like when you actually identify your niche, I want you to celebrate that in a beautiful, profound way, whether it's to do a post and say, if you're in my school community, you put a post out there celebrating that you finally accomplished your niche. You identified which niche you were going to work on. Or in our school community, I just had somebody say that I'd seen someone say they had just created their LLC. That's an accomplishment. So I want you to celebrate your milestones. And I want you to reflect on your journey and express the ways in which you can continue to move forward. Because I'm telling you, when you can do that, and you do it sincerely, and you model that in front of the people who are following you, they're going to do it too. Next thing you know, you've got your team doing it. Like, we are constantly celebrating now. Like, I see it now, but I thought about where it was years ago. I was always looking at, man, I woulda, shoulda, coulda, or should have done it differently this way. No, celebrate. And through celebration, because that is also an example of celebrating God, because God expects us to be grateful and thankful and honoring the things that we're allowed to do. So when you reach that milestone, you're thanking God, look what we did. We got that done. So I want to encourage you to celebrate the milestones that you have and document your journey of where you are and where you've come. Because you're going to look at that. And when I say document, I'm not just sitting there saying, think about it. I'm saying write it down and find a way to look back at it so that you can reflect on what it is that you've accomplished. That's why I'm a big advocate for utilizing a platform. We use an online platform for how we communicate, because at any point in time I can go back and say, oh God, I remember that, right? Or we can look at, that's what I love about Facebook, because Facebook does that. It reminds us of what happened 10 years ago this date. Like, beautiful. But you want to remember where you've come, because you'll see how much you've grown, even though it doesn't look like you've grown. But I would say, I want to encourage you to keep taking the ante up and celebrating yourself, and then find creative ways to celebrate your team and your community. Those who are on your team as volunteers or people working who are part of your team that isn't getting a quote unquote paycheck or whatever, you want to recognize your team. You want to be creative in how you acknowledge that, whether it's you all got shirts saying we made it, or whether it's everyone gets a nice cup that says thank you. Like, whatever it is, you want to show appreciation and showing when you've accomplished and celebrated a milestone. When you are able to do that, you are going to thrive as a compassionate investor. And I want to encourage you to take those things and implement them in your life and in your transitional housing facility, because those are the things that are going to take you to the next level, as well as your team, as you move into the space of developing a successful transitional housing facility. So I hope you got something from this particular part of our 9-part series on starting a transitional housing facility. Let me tell you, the next one is going to be the doozy. This is going to be the one that you've been waiting for. So hopefully you've got your subscriptions, or you've subscribed so you can get notifications when I put out another video, because this one right here will be the last part of our 9-part series, and I want you to get that. Go ahead and give me some comments below as well, because I want to hear from you and see what other ways that we can grow together and transform our lives, because transform lives transform the world, and so it is.